Hi and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be doing a summary of the books that I read in January. Now, I was able to read 61 books. I'm sorry, I'm just bringing up Google Sheets on my phone so I have two sources of it and that way I don't waste too much time. I read 61 books in January, which my goal was 2 books a day, so that would have been 62. And I did read probably 75% of another book, but I carried it over and finished it today, February 1st, so it's not counted. So that's 61 books. My actual goal of reading is at least 35 books a month. My firm goal is 35 books a month, and my soft goal is 2 books a day. So I have two goals that are, because you're only competing with yourself. You're not comparing yourself to anybody else. Whether you read 1 book, 10 books, 5 books, 100 books. This is me. I'm just worrying about what Robin is doing. Sorry if the phone's been up there. I have it in my hands. So I read 61 books and I use stats. I love stats. I categorize my books or log my books in 3 ways. Goodreads, because I've been doing it for years and I like to see that number in the stats as each year you can compare year to year because like I said, you're competing against yourself only. But I also use Bookly, which gives me summaries, but Bookly is a little iffy, especially the way that books are dated. So I don't usually use that graphic anymore. And then if we backtrack to Goodreads, I did start using something else. I totally forgot about it. It is called the Challenge Reading Group, which is a Goodreads group. Goodreads has hundreds of groups, but with the Challenge Factory Reading Group on Goodreads, there's a way that you can create an image of everything that you're doing. And I'll show you. I'm going to bring it up on my tablet so I can tell you what things I'm going to show you. And let's go to my bookmarks. I do have it saved. I have it saved 2 ways, as a bookmark and as a direct Facebook grab. So if we look at the first page that I'm showing you, it says January 2026 read. That is a nice, neat way of pulling in every title that I read. And the way I do it is chronologically, but in a backwards manner. So the Resistance Knitting Club, which is on the upper left corner of this image, was the last book I read in January. And at the bottom right of the image, it has Hidden by Kendra Elliott because that's the first book I read. I also am using the Challenge Factory group here on Goodreads to track my TBRs by month. I only have February, which let me go ahead and show you February. And then I have March, and I'll go ahead and show you March. But those will be added to very much so. Maybe not as many more will come in February, but from March onward, those will grow. So what you do is you put in a search field and you type the name of the book and it will bring up a list of books by that name, and you tell it whether you want it to present as an image or as text. I chose image, and that's why you can see the images that I've talked about. So that is one of the things that I'm doing for tracking, but I am a little bit more anal than that. Sorry, I had a typo. I was just correcting a typo if you saw me looking down. I'm a little bit, yeah, and I'm calling myself a name, okay? The reason I say that is because I have found a spreadsheet that I've talked about twice on this channel before, and it's called Brock's Reading Spreadsheet. And the YouTube channel is Let's Read, and it's called Brock's Reading Spreadsheet. I think this is my 6th year using the spreadsheet because even though Brock doesn't make content anymore, he does update the spreadsheet yearly. Now, I think actually to be 100% honest with you, I can update it yearly as well, but I just go ahead and grab the yearly one that he does. This spreadsheet is really neat because it tracks multiple columns and it's really nice the way that Brock has it set up, because these columns are called categories. And with the categories, everything, if you add in all the data in each category, it translates over to a summary page, and it also translates into charts like bar charts, pie graphs, and things of that nature. So I love filling in this spreadsheet. And I'm not going to read all the columns, but it has month, title, author, start and finish date, status, number of pages, format, publisher, genre, acquired, other things such as the protagonist or the gender of the author, the length of the book, and there's multiple. I didn't even count how many columns there are, because I've added to it. I've added my own personal things that I want to track. So that's why I can't tell you how many categories. Interestingly, I love that this spreadsheet also tracks age group, because I think yes, I do have at least one book that's in a YA, and that is in Enola Holmes. I think it's Enola Holmes in the Clanging Coffin. I don't know what date I'm reading it, because I'm reading chronologically. So I love that this spreadsheet will allow me to say whether it's an adult book. Let me just double tap it. Adult, YA, middle grade, or kids. So I love the spreadsheet. So by means of the spreadsheet, we have these beautiful numbers that I just can't get enough of. And I think what I will do is, as I talk to you now, I'm going to look down occasionally and create screenshots that will fit the narrative of this video. So let's get started with genres. I will tell you the names of the books, or at least show you. So the first screenshot that I'm going to share with you is genres. And I have a great love of mysteries and thrillers, as well as psychological thrillers. So the first image you're going to see here, and like I said, I'm creating these screenshots as I'm talking to you, is genres. 6 psychological thrillers I read in January, 47 mysteries and thrillers. I read 3 romance, 3 historical fiction, 1 memoir, and way down at the bottom, 1 fantasy. Okay, which was the magical realism book that I'll briefly mention. And then I won't bother screenshotting this one, but this also tracks the amount of pages. So for example, for psychological thrillers, I'll say for psychological thrillers, I read 1,905 pages. But for mysteries and thrillers, go ahead and make the screenshot. For mysteries and thrillers, I read 11,117 pages. So I love the way that Brock has designed the spreadsheet. I could never write a spreadsheet like this, because I'm not a spreadsheet creator. Not at this point. I'm just a spreadsheet user. Another thing that his spreadsheet tracks is format. And format is really good, because I like to know for my own sake, because when you're reading, you're only reading to your standards. You're only comparing yourself to your best. It has nothing to do with anybody else, whether you read 1 book, 5 book, 10, whether you read this genre, that genre. This is just something for my edification. So the next screenshot that, like I said, that I'm creating for you is format. And here it says ebook, which is 1, because it was a Kindle Unlimited title that was not a NetGalley title. There's a reason that I mentioned that. 48 of these were audiobooks. Yes, it will be my biggest month of audiobooks in 2026, I can guarantee you, but we'll get to that later. And then uncorrected proofs or advanced reader copies was only 12. I say it was only 12 because in December I read all of January's books. So for January, I wanted to read all of February's books. This is February, I would want to read all of March books, but I didn't do that. I pivoted, I threw that out the window. And that plays into why 48 of the books I read were audiobooks. Another screenshot that I would love to share with you is the length of the books, because this is something that usually does not vary with me. It usually stays the same. but it's different for this month, or for the month that we're talking about. I read 40 novels, 40 full length, 350 to 400, and even over 400 page novels. But I've also read slash listened to 21 novellas. That is something that I'll explain to you in a few minutes, but 21 novellas, which is a high number for me. This screenshot that I'm creating right now is a really nice screenshot if you care about what you read, how much time it took you to read it, and so forth. So for this particular one, I'm just saving this stuff as I talk to you. It shows you the total number of pages that I read in January, which was 15,921. And so it averaged out to 261 pages a book. That's because 21 of them were novellas. I believe when you see February onward, you'll see 330 to 335 pages a book as an average. But for January, it averaged to 261. Now, I wanted to include also the hours of reading, which was 204.54 hours, so 204 and a half hours of January. The total for the whole month was 204 hours. With my eyeballs, it was 58 hours and 45 minutes. With my listening, it was 146 hours and 9 minutes. Now, I listen at between 2.2 and 2.5. So that number could have easily have been 300, but I read at double speed. So with that, I read, again, with my eyeballs, 4,313 pages, and then listened to 11,608 books. And we'll stop here, and I'm going to show you a screenshot of Kendra Elliott's books. And I'm going to do it in two screenshots because there are 47 books. And that is by far the bulk of what I read in January. And I think I just may put them side by side. The bulk of what I read in January, because I was hunting down and reading every Kendra Elliott book that I could find, and I did find them all. And the reason I did that, and like I said, I'm stepping away from the other screenshots I'm talking about, is in December I read a book called No One Knew. And also in December, I wrote all of the reviews for January, but I could not write the review for No One Knew. And I couldn't understand why, because I do have an eidetic memory. So that wasn't the reason why I couldn't write it. I just felt like something was missing from the book. So after I was done with my December stuff, I went over to fantasticfiction.com, one of my favorite websites, and I looked up Kendra Elliott, or I looked up No One Knew, found out that it was part of a series, and it was actually the second book in the series. The first book in the series was Her First Mistake, so I went and I hunted it down. Libby didn't have it, Hoopla didn't have it, so I decided to see if Kindle Unlimited had it, and not only did Kindle Unlimited have it, but they had it in audio format, which looks like it comes through your Audible account. So I went ahead and grabbed Her First Mistake, listened to it, and actually went back and listened to No One Knew again. I didn't count No One Knew twice for December. I backtracked to December for a minute. I did not count No One Knew twice, but I could have, but I didn't bother. But so I went over to my Neck Alley Facebook, the Neck Alley Facebook group that I'm in, and I mentioned that I struggled to write a review for a title because I felt like something was missing. And like I said, I discovered it was the second book in the series. I'm sorry, I'm losing weight so much. I need new shirts. They just don't sit right on me. They look awful on me. But anyway, when a couple of people says, oh, guess what, Robin? Kendra Elliott writes multiple series and they all interconnect one way or another. So back to Fantastic Fiction I went, and found this great magnanimous group of titles written by Kendra Elliott and also Melinda Lee later in the series where they co-wrote different novellas. So my February reading that I was going to accomplish in January, yes, we're coming back to January, when I was going to read all of February's arcs, I didn't do that. I went ahead and started a list of every Kendra Elliott book that there was according to fantasticfiction.com, which beautifully lists the books in order in most cases. There's some rare occasions where there's things that don't lie in order, but for the most part, if you do your research, you can use Fantastic Fiction if you need to compare it to Goodreads and put together a cumulative plan. And that's what I did. And that's why I showed you those Kendra Elliott books. I could very have easily named that particular screenshot also to be Melinda Lee, because as we got deeper into the Kendra Elliott, like Mercy and Kilpatrick, and just different ones, she started co-writing with Melinda Lee, and it culminated with the one of the last books that I read in January, which was Echo Road, which they co-wrote together. But that was an interesting book because you could tell Melinda Lee's writing and you could tell Kendra Elliott's writing, and it was very easy to see because it was Bree Taggart and Mercy Kilpatrick. So if it was a Bree Taggart chapter, you knew it was written by Melinda Lee. If it was a Mercy Kilpatrick title, you knew it was written by Kendra Elliott. So I don't know if I've ever read a book that was so clearly distinct in voice, Melinda Lee's voice and Kendra Elliott's voice in the same book. I don't know if I've ever read anything like that. So that brings me back to my Google Sheets. And one of the pages that I often share is this page that tells me the books I read per month and the pages per month and the pages per day. And that's the the screenshot that I'm creating right now. And what's cool about this is in January, it's just a linear example. 61 books, 15,921 pages, an average of 514 pages a day. Days per book is usually always one because it's very rare for me to take more than one day to read a book. As the year flushes out, it will start to collate my February, March, April, May, and then this screenshot that I'm showing you will look much different. So I love that. Other things that I track that I won't bother to, well, yeah, I'll do this one here. Page length. Remember, I think I stated that some of these books were novellas. In fact, 21 were novellas. So you can see that represented in page length. Less than 100 pages, there were actually two. 100 to 199 pages, there was 19. 200 to 299 pages, there were 6. 300 pages to 399 pages, I read 32. And 400 pages to 499 pages, I read 2. So I do appreciate that graphic, and I wanted to share that. And then status. This is where I sometimes will adjust Brock's spreadsheet to grab books that I read. And I'll tell you why. If you look at my status page here, it shows purchase, which was 1, and that was because it was an Audible title. KU, which is Kindle Unlimited, 44. Advanced reader copies were 14, and library was 2. So at the bottom of that, you see that it says purchase is 1, and again, that's because it was an Audible title, but free for the most part. It lists them as 60, but that's not really accurate now that I'm taking a look at it. I may change that because the Kindle Unlimited shouldn't come up as free. So I think I'm going to adjust that and fix it for February. So that's about it. I don't think I need to share any other screenshots other from this summary page, but I do want to show you what my series screenshot looks like. And you'll see that it starts off as, and I'm doing this with something on the screen for you, Detective Morgan Brooks by Helen Pfeiffer. It's an ongoing series. There's at least 18 books in the series, and I just read book 17. So as of now, I'm 94.4% done with that series. And that's because Helen Pfeiffer writes those books two, maybe even three times a year. So I have to leave it like that until we see where she stands with that. And then for Natalie Meg Evans, for the Wartime Lodging House by Natalie Meg Evans, I read the second book for review, so I went to Kindle Unlimited and I got the first book and I listened to read that. And then as I was writing the review, I realized that this is going to be a trilogy. And because it's going to be a trilogy, it shows here on this spreadsheet that I am only 66.7% done with this book series. So there's no release date as of yet. It's not in any way where you can find, but guarantee you that in that Wartime series by Natalie Meg Evans, there will be a third book. And the woman who will be featured in that third book, her name is Bethany, because you have the other characters, Grace and I believe Jess, who feature in Grace is in book one, Jess is in book two, and Bethany will be in whatever upcoming book three. Then this is the meat of this series spreadsheet that I'm sharing with you guys. From Wartime Lodging House down to Widow's Island are all, from Bone Secrets down to Widow's Island, these are all Kendra Elliott series, and then later they are series that she co-wrote with Melinda Lee. You'll notice that under series status it says complete, and I still have to fix. I have to fix this. Yeah, let me go ahead and fix this because Wartime Lodging House is an ongoing, and my status is ongoing. Okay, I just had a mistake that I had to fix, but that's okay because that's the glory of technology is you can go ahead and correct your own mistakes. So back to this. You see from Bone Secrets down to Widow's Island in the green where it says complete, that means that the series status that I have read thus far means that I have finished. If you look to the left of that where you see series status, it's all listed as complete. Up until, don't worry about the Maud O'Connor series, I'm reading that later. But for the Kendra Elliott and Melinda Lee. So when you look over at the percent done, for all of these books, I am 100% complete. And that's where we're going to pivot a bit in this series. The first series that we'll talk about is her Bone Secret series. There were 5 books, and I read all 5 of those books, and I'll screenshot you what those 5 titles were and show you that now. With Callahan and McLean, there were 4 titles, and I'll show you those 4. Then her Mercy Kilpatrick series, there were 7. I thought there were initially 6, but I found out later that Echo Road was part of that series that she co-wrote with Melinda Lee. So I have read all of those. For Columbia River, there were 6 titles, and this is where we're getting into novellas. 6 Columbia River titles that were novellas, all written by Kendra Elliott. And then there were 4 series: Rogue River, Rogue Winter, Rogue Vows, Rogue Justice, and okay, we'll just talk about those 4 for a moment. Those were both Kendra Elliott and Melinda Lee. For Rogue River, there were 4 titles, so they each wrote 2. And then for Rogue Winter, Rogue Vows, and Rogue Justice, there were 2 each, and they each wrote 1. And then for Widow's Island, there were 10 novellas, and they each wrote 5. So this is this is a page on Brock's spreadsheet that I never used in all the years I've been using it, but now I'm so glad that I'm using it, and I hope to flesh this out in 2026 even more. In fact, if you still have the screenshot, if I put the screenshot back up, you'll see Maud O'Connor Mysteries. There are 4 in there, but I haven't even started, so I haven't even filled up anything in there. So those were all of the ways that you can track. And I will bring in one other page for you. I will bring in this pie chart in bar graph stuff that comes through if you use all of the columns. So I'll show you that. And then I'm going to leave this spreadsheet and go into a temporary spreadsheet that I made. And the reason I did that is because you can sort by any way you want to sort. So I could sort by date, I could sort by author, I could sort by title. So I pre-sorted this by author, but the way that I'm doing it, because I'm using author's first name and then last name, it only sorts it by first name. If I wanted to be really fussy, I could change that to say, for example, the first book, Alice Feeney, My Husband's Wife, I could change it to Feeney, Alice, and then it would do it differently. So for the sake of this video, I'll tell you about, I think it was 10, 11, 12. Oh, more than I thought. 13, 14. Okay, 18 other books that were not Kendra Elliott and Melinda Lee. So we'll talk about those 18 books really briefly. They were My Husband's Wife, which is by Alice Feeney, which I gave 5 stars. I know someone who only gave it 3, and I know someone who only gave it 4, but that's, reading is interpretive. It's what you feel and how you connect to it. Then I read The Sleeping in the Dead by Anne Cleves. It came up on NetGallery mid-January with a release date of January 27th. And even though it was a re-release of a book that was written in 2001, but now it's re-released in audio format. And it's a psychological crime thriller. Just my cup of tea. Then we have Love and Other Words that came up in one of my Facebooks, the Facebook group I moderate, which is the Reading Corner Book Lounge. And we were going to have a group discussion on Love and Other Words. I personally would only give it 3 stars, but that's, again, my opinion on the book. And then I read The Doctor by Daniel Hurst, and it was almost a little bit late on my part because I didn't look him up on Fantastic Fiction. I didn't realize that this was a series, but this is a prequel to the other books, the other 3 books that he wrote. I wasn't going to necessarily read the other 3 books since The Doctor is the prequel, but now I'm being told that I'm going to really want to read the other books. So I will go to Kindle Unlimited and do that. And then I had Love and Other Brain Experiments by Hannah Brome. And this is a debut, and it was a really good debut in the sense of the author is a neuroscientist and her character is a neuroscientist. So I knew going in that it was a STEM read where you have a STEM heroine. And anytime there's a STEM heroine, which is science, technology, something in mathematics, I should have looked that up. But if I find out that there's a STEM character, I will generally want to read the book. Then we have The Forget Me Not Library by Heather Weber. Again, this is something that my group, the Reading Corner Book Lounge, will be discussing. So I read it for that recommendation. Really sweet book where it's not my genre. Fantasy and magical realism, 2 genres or co-genres that I don't read, but I did. And the book was really sweet. I loved that it wasn't like throwing me deep under the bus with, ghosts and paranormal, because I won't read that. But it was perfect. And then I read Two Wives by Helen H. Durant. It was a psychological thriller, a mystery thriller, which I think it was book 17 in the Detective Morgan Brooks series, and that is Silence Sisters by Helen Pfeiffer. And then the last book I read in January was The Resistance Knitting Club by Jenny O'Brien, which was a historical fiction. And then We Were Never Friends by Kiara Ruda. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of leaning towards a 3, maybe a 4 for that book. But that was a really intense book. I'm just going to leave it at that. Then I also read This Book Made Me Think of You by Libby Page, which was my top book for January. And I'm using a book bracket that one of my co-moderators on the Facebook group I moderate, and she created several bracket sheets, and I'll show you my bracket sheet. So I put that there. So what you do is for each month you put your favorite read, and then you break it down. So now my favorite read for January is This Book Made Me Think of You. And when I find out what my favorite book of February is, I put that underneath it, and then I have to decide which to move over in the bracket. If you need more on that, let me know. And then there is Good Intentions, which is by Marissa Walls. I didn't like this book very much. Then I also read Such a Perfect Family by Nalini Singh, which she usually writes fantasy. So when I found out she wrote a psychological thriller, I jumped at it. And then I read The Irish Nurse at the Lodging House and The Vicar's Daughter at the Lodging House by Natalie Meg Evans. They were both historical fiction. And then somebody in my group, again, one of the moderators or admins, talked about Paris. Paris is Paris Hilton's memoir. I've been reading more memoirs in the last 3 or 4 years, so I found out that Libby had it. I grabbed it and I listened to it. Excellent book, heartbreaking book, but an excellent book nonetheless. And then I read In Her Defense by Philippa Malika, and lastly, Paper Cut by Rachel Taff. So those are all the other main books that I read that don't come under this discussion where I showed you all of these Kendra Elliott titles. Now, I am going to bring her up on Fantastic Fiction for just a minute, and I'll tell you why. Kendra Elliott. There you go. Okay, so if we look up her series, the first one is Bone Secrets, and I talked about that in the earlier in this video when I showed you that graphic. So they were hidden, chilled, buried, veiled, which was a novella, and then there was Alone and Known. Okay, so I will have shown you all of those. Then I went on to her Callahan and McLean series. Those were Vanished, Bridged, Spiraled, and Targeted, all full-length novels. Then I went on to her Mercy Kilpatrick series, which lists on Fantastic Fiction as 6 titles, but by rights it should be 7 because Echo Road, which she co-wrote with Melinda Lee, that comes on Fantastic Fiction as a standalone novel, but I'm telling you it wasn't. It was part of the Mercy Kilpatrick and Bree Taggart series, but I haven't read the Bree Taggart series yet. They were A Merciful Death for the Mercy Kilpatrick series, A Merciful Truth, A Merciful Secret, A Merciful Silence, A Merciful Fate, and lastly, again, for the sake of this part, A Merciful Promise. And then we'll pull in an image of Echo Road. Now, these were all full-length novels, and they were all 5-star novels, in my opinion. Now we're getting to all of this huge group of novellas, starting with the Columbia River series, and they were The Last Sister, The Silence, In the Pines, At the River, and The Next Grave. Then there's a category on the way Fantastic Fictions, and it says series contributed to. So, for example, the Rogue River series, there were 4 books in that series, 2 written by Kendra Elliott and 2 written by Melinda Lee. And so they were On Her Father's Grave, which was by Kendra Elliott, Gone to Her Grave, which was Her Grave Secrets, which was Melinda Lee, and then Her Grave Secrets, which was Kendra Elliott, and then Walking on Her Grave, which was Melinda Lee. And as soon as I started reading these with Melinda Lee's name, I looked at her, and now I want to exhaust her. I would like to exhaust her backlist in February. Then the next series is the Rogue Winter series that Melinda Lee and Kendra Elliott wrote. Tracks of Her Tears was Melinda Lee, and Dead in Her Tracks was Kendra Elliott. And then if we move down to the Rogue Vows series, again, 2 titles. Kendra Elliott wrote the first one, which is Death in Her Devotion, and then Melinda Lee wrote Burned by Her Devotion. Rogue Justice was Twisted Truth by Melinda Lee and Truth Be Told by Kendra Elliott. And then we're getting down to the end. We have Widow's Island, which had 10 titles, 5 by each of them. And they were Close to the Bone. And you'll see that author's name at the bottom. I don't need to read that. Close to the Bone, A Bone to Pick, Whisper of Bones, Bread in the Bone, Below the Bones, A Broken Bone, Buried Bones, The Lost Bones, Bone Deep, and The Wrong Bones. So I think that's it. And so as of this point, I have read everything by Kendra Elliott now. There are her, no, I'll tell you what her Noel Marshall series were, but these were 2 books that I read in December, but I will show you them now. They were Her First Mistake, and then there was No One Knew. And then later this year, there will be Until She Dies, and next year there will be Never to Return. Those don't count for January, but again, I have exhausted everything that Kendra Elliott wrote. So I think that's about it. I think as of this point, I've talked about every book. I gave you some stats, and I am now going to create this in the manner of where I can give you all the screenshots. So I want to thank you for watching, and I will come back with you with more. And thank you again.